I'm a business systems expert that's helped thousands of small businesses get organized. But when I search online for how to build a business that runs without you, or how to build business systems, or how to systemize your operations, I don't feel motivated. I feel scared because a lot of the advice that's floating out there for people like you to consume is just completely out of line with what I've seen actually work in the trenches of systemizing small businesses. So today I want to cut through the noise, and I'm going to go through the 9 most popular pieces of advice about systemizing a business and tell you whether it's fact, fiction, and why, so you can make sure you're systemizing your business the right way versus just following generic advice that will never actually work. Advice number 1 we're going to vet is create documentation for everything in your business. This is very common. AI will tell you it with confidence, and it's just utter bullshit for how small teams really work. Create documentation for everything is a great aspiration. It's an end state. It's like, hey, rule the world. Sure, why not? You can dream about it, but don't actually spend your time trying to do it. Creating documentation for everything often manifests in having things like written instructions or policies for every single thing your business does. The problem with that is that 1, most small businesses don't have time to create all this documentation, so they create it at the cost of getting real work done. The second problem, number 2, is that most small teams, even if they make the time to create the documentation, they don't make the time to maintain it. And processes change on a weekly or monthly basis for most small teams. If you have documentation for everything, maintaining that documentation alone could be a full-time job or 2, even on a team of 10. Both of those things don't make sense. And the third thing I really don't like about this first piece of advice is the word everything. There's this completionist attitude that people who are new to system building tend to adopt. They say, okay, I learned what a checklist is. I need a checklist for everything. Or they'll learn about standard operating procedures. I need an SOP for everything. And I love the enthusiasm. But the reality is business systems are there to help the business and the people in it have a better time, achieve the business outcomes. If 5 SOPs are all we need in order for the business to function properly, just write 5. We do not need a goal of everything because our goal of business systems is to support the people and to support the business, not to just document things for the sake of documenting them. So this first piece of advice goes squarely in the garbage can. The second piece of business systems advice is that you need to focus on the who. If you can just get the right A players with the perfect common sense, your business systems problems will just go away. And hey, if things aren't working out right now, it's probably your people's fault. They're just not good enough. They don't got the brain power that you need. On its face, this argument makes a lot of sense. It is logical to solve problems by having the people who are best suited to solve those problems. The challenge is hiring for who and not how. That whole approach is really great for novelty. When there's something big and scary, figuring out who can help me solve this problem is amazing. But for a lot of small businesses, we are not solving new and exciting challenges regularly. In fact, we're doing the same things day in and day out. And so while it can be great to have this goal of hiring these unicorns who can just fix everything, I think we would likely introduce new problems into our small business of then we need to find something for this unicorn to do once all the big shiny problems are solved. The second issue with this approach to people and swapping out people as if they're cogs in a machine is 1, they're not, and 2, the concept of common sense is never going to go away. Even if we hire A players, they may not have common sense, because a lot of times when people and business owners especially use that phrase common sense, what they really mean is sense in common. Meaning, when there's a situation that comes up, the business owner sees it and thinks, here's all the context I have about that. Well, of course, this is the right decision. The employee, by exchange, sees that same situation, doesn't have the same context in common with the business owner, and they reach a different decision. So, same situation, different context, different outcome. And then we blame common sense as if it's this thing you either have or don't have. And that's just stupid. Rather than just blaming a person fundamentally for not having the thing we need, why not just provide a way to have the same sense in common? By sharing context, by giving that employee making that decision the actual information that you have in your head to make that decision. That kind of lack of context sharing is not going to go away whether you have an all-star or someone who's fresh out of college joining your team. It's something you have to figure out. And the sooner you stop blaming other people, the sooner you can actually get to the real root of it. So even though I think this is well-intentioned and can be helpful generally speaking for small businesses looking to systemize, I would put this advice in the trash can. The next piece of advice is that you should create video instructions or Loom videos for all of the things in your business in order to make writing them down faster. Videos take a long time to create. You might think they're faster because you're just going through the steps, but actually narrating it and telling information, it's going to take you quite a while. Then once you're done creating that video, it's saved as a locked file. It's an MP4, whatever it is. You then send that video to another person. In order for them to understand what you just sent them, they have to watch this whole freaking video to figure out what you were trying to have them do. And because in that video you explained all this context, they have to watch maybe 20 minutes of video content to figure out how to do a 5-minute task. That is really, really inconvenient. Not to mention the very likely scenario that when your process changes every week or every month, you have to then refilm that video, which is a giant pain in the butt. I make videos here for a living, I guess we can say that now, and the idea of refilming a video every time something changes makes me want to cry. I didn't want to say the word cry, but I'm going to say cry. Yeah. It's not good. It's not fun. And I don't want that for a busy business owner as well, especially on a small team where time is so valuable. Instead, if you really like videos, sure, record a video, but then immediately convert it using software like Scribe or even just AI and turn that video into text and optionally images. This is really important because when it comes to standard operating procedures or any kind of documentation, you're going to create it one time. And ideally, you're going to be referencing it thousands of times over its lifetime, and you'll be updating it hundreds of times during its lifetime. So rather than optimizing for what's easiest up front, that thing you do once, let's optimize for what's easiest long term, which would be text and maybe some screenshots if you want to include them. Even in this age of AI, I would really discourage you from doing the generic advice of creating some kind of giant video library of all of the information you have, because what you're going to do is you're going to create it, no one's going to look at it, and you're never going to update those videos. I can see your future because I've seen hundreds of clients do this. Please save your time, put this one straight in the trash. The next common piece of advice, standardize and simplify the core workflows of your business, which means make sure you know what good looks like and can follow those same steps every time. In a refreshing change of pace, this is actually a piece of advice I would highly encourage anyone trying to build a business that runs without them to implement. What this looks like is often creating some kind of process map, which is something I outline in this video up here, where you outline the steps to go from beginning to end in the most important areas of your business. Just like we don't want to create documentation for everything, we also don't need to create a map for everything. But for the most important flows in your business, I do think this can bring a whole lot of clarity and can really make sure you know where things are working and not working in your business. When you take the time to write down what good looks like, and especially if you then put it inside a project management tool, having this standardized flow where you cross out the junk and have just the important steps that you go through, that's worth its weight in gold. And rather than the trash can, we'll put that on the shelf. Next piece of advice we're going to stress test is that every founder/business owner needs to have an executive assistant. And this really harkens back to the days of professionals having their little secretaries who are there to just clean up all of their messes and do any of their busy work. By and large, the argument makes sense. If you are a seasoned professional, you should only be doing the things that require all of your professional skills, and everything else should go off your plate. However, in the age of AI and technology coming as far as it is, I would say that most duties that were reasonably done by a low-skill executive assistant or secretary or virtual assistant can now be either automated, entirely removed, or done by AI. And so while I agree with the spirit of this in some sense, that yes, you should delegate, I would say overall, I put this advice in the trash can. And if I could revise it, I would say every business owner or founder needs some way to easily delegate tasks that are not a good fit for them. That could be to a virtual assistant, but for most small businesses, that would just be to other team members. By the way, if you're tired of sifting through the not so helpful advice about building business systems, you might want to check out the webinar in the description below. It's a webinar that I've recorded that's like an hour-long masterclass of what actually works to systemize small teams from start to finish. It's totally free in the description below. Next bit of advice we're going to stress test is that you should automate repetitive tasks. And on the whole, I kind of agree with this. If something is the same every time, it's very simple. We don't need an EA, we don't need a VA, we just need to set up a robot to do the thing for us. Whether this is a zap, a make scenario, or something in between, we can use technology to do a lot of the things we would have done manually. Now, I would put this on the shelf of good advice with one key asterisk. Before you consider automating a repetitive task, my suggestion to you would be to do it manually at least a dozen times. The reason I'm suggesting doing repetitive tasks manually first is because you will learn a lot about the process. For example, if you have the process of manually sending an invoice via email, before you automate it, do it manually 12 times. What you'll realize is, oh, well, when I write the email, I want to write it a certain way to make sure people respond. Oh, when I set up the invoice, I want to make sure I put this little note to say, hey, it was so great to talk to you. Hey, when I send the invoice, I also want to have a reminder set up. These are little quirks that you're going to realize by having a human being doing the action and seeing what's working and what doesn't, that you will need to define if you want to do it the same way 12 times. So each time you're learning a little bit, keeping notes, making sure it's consistent, and then all of those notes and all of that information you have from those 12 repetitions, well, that's exactly the information you need in order to automate that step. So often I see people jump to the automation. They half know what they want. They put some stuff into Zapier, some automation tool. Then they end up with some jarbled mess that they then have to go back and fix and edit because they didn't really know what they were automating. I don't want you to waste your time on those kinds of messes when you've got other things to do, like, I don't know, run your business. So please, if you're open to a suggestion, do this manual work first and then automate immediately after. Speaking of repetitive tasks, there's no repetitive task more frustrating than that of trying to teach human beings. Because remember, our previous points, humans are difficult. And one of the common pieces of advice around people is that if your team members are not following your process, you probably need to train them more. Take ownership. Give them the information, drill it into their heads. Training is really designed to solve an information gap. Most training, that is. If someone doesn't know how to use the printer, we could train them on the printer and voila, they can use the printer. And in specific cases where it truly is information standing in the way, by all means, add some training to make sure your team can use that whatever it is system that you have in place. In fact, when it comes to the training question, there's a whole book that breaks down why training is not the best default solution to a lot of performance problems. I'll have it linked here and in the description below. And because of that book and what I've seen out in the field, I don't think it's often the best default that if people aren't using your system, let's assume it's training. That's just not what I've seen to be true. Instead, the most common reasons people aren't using your system is because your system isn't worth using. It's not helpful. It's not solving any real needs. It doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't help them become more powerful at their job. It doesn't help them look like a badass. It doesn't help them go on vacation. And even if it does, they don't think it does. And so rather than train your team being the default approach or punish your team being the default approach, when it comes to change management or getting team members to adopt a system, I think we really need to get back to the fundamentals of why is this system worth them using? How does it help them? Making sure they are aware of that, but also experiencing that is going to be a lot more powerful than throwing more information at them, punishing them, or writing them off for not being A players with common sense. So overall, I would put this training solution as a well-intentioned garbage. Now, speaking of incentives, the last piece of common advice that we're going to break down is that you should track key metrics in your business regularly. And overall, I do agree with this one. If you are looking to make sure things are going in the right direction, the best way is to actually measure those things. But I would add, once again, a little asterisk on this common piece of advice that numbers are only as valuable as the attention they get. And especially if you're one of those teams who's setting up an automatic dashboard, so all of the reporting is happening automatically, that sounds like a good thing, but what really ends up happening is the numbers are happening, but no one is paying attention to them. So I would say metrics are very helpful for any kind of systemization effort as long as you have recurring rituals around checking those numbers, analyzing the trends, critically asking, why are the numbers going up or down? Is this good or is this bad? Making sure there is time to critically discuss and analyze your numbers is the only way this key metrics advice actually makes any kind of difference in your business. And I do say make time intentionally here. I would suggest on a weekly cadence, have numbers being tracked. And on a monthly cadence, you have a review of those numbers, either asynchronously as an offline, look at these and critically review what you're seeing, or even as a meeting on a monthly or weekly basis. But overall, numbers can really guide us in the right direction of our business as long as we are measuring the right numbers and thinking about them critically, which I have a whole video on up at the top, which I will link. So overall, I would put key metrics up on the shelf as a practice you definitely want to steal, as long as you make sure you actually use those numbers. And now that we're at this point, you might be thinking, wait a second, I've only got a few things up on the shelf. What do I do to start systemizing my business so it can run without me if all of this advice I've heard doesn't actually work? Well, the answer is we start prioritizing. I want you to start thinking about the things that happen in your business, and we want to prioritize the most chaotic area to start organizing that first. And then you want to watch this video next, because as you start prioritizing, this video will show you how to take that process and actually make it better over time. Be sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, enjoy the process.